50 million euros in transfer fees, double his current salary, a 4-year contract that would secure his finances for the rest of his career. That is what Galatasaray have just put on the table for the Manchester United captain, and Old Trafford responded in less than 24 hours. Bruno Fernandes is not for sale. Not a polite rejection like "we'll consider it," but a door slammed shut almost immediately. The question now is no longer whether Galatasaray have enough money. Clearly they do. The question is, why has such a firm rejection still not completely killed this transfer? And why, at this exact moment, with Bruno at the peak of his career, has his future suddenly become such a hot topic? According to The Telegraph, Galatasaray are preparing an offer of around 50 million euros for Manchester United, including add-ons. Alongside that comes a 4-year salary package worth around £18.3 million per season after tax, plus a signing bonus estimated to be worth several million pounds more. In other words, if Bruno says yes, his take-home income in Istanbul would be almost double what he currently earns at Old Trafford, where he is already one of the highest-paid players in the squad. President Dursun Özbek is reportedly leading the operation himself, personally following every development, and manager Okan Buruk has long viewed Fernandes as a dream target for the central attacking midfield role, the missing piece in Galatasaray's ambition to make a serious impact in Europe. But from Manchester United's side, the answer leaves almost no room for interpretation. Not for sale yet, not only for the right price, but not for sale at any price. Sky Sports, citing sources close to the club, say Fernandes is currently considered untouchable regardless of how much Galatasaray are willing to offer. One journalist closely following Old Trafford even stressed that there will come a time when Manchester United have to think about life without Bruno, but certainly not this summer, while he remains a central piece of Michael Carrick's plans in both the Premier League and the Champions League. It is a position so clear that it leaves almost no escape route. To understand why that firmness is so significant, we have to go back exactly 1 year. Last summer, Al Hilal made a huge offer, reportedly worth more than 100 million euros, enough to force Manchester United to think seriously. But instead of immediately shutting the door as they have now, the club effectively allowed Bruno himself to decide the fate of the move. He chose to stay, but afterward, Fernandes admitted he had felt hurt, not because another club wanted him, which is perfectly normal for a player of his level, but because he felt Manchester United had not made it clear enough that they truly wanted him to remain. 1 year ago, Bruno needed to hear that he mattered. 1 year later, United have left almost no other interpretation than this. They want him to stay at all costs. So why are Galatasaray still pushing for a transfer that the other side seems to have shut down from the very beginning? Simply because they are no longer a club that signs famous names only for publicity and then leaves it at that. After spending heavily this summer, Galatasaray are trying to build a squad with enough depth, experience, and star power to make a genuine impact in the Champions League, not simply dominate the Super League. Bruno, as captain of one of the biggest clubs in the world and coming off the best season of his career, is exactly the kind of signing who could elevate both the image and the footballing quality of that project with a single signature. For a club trying to establish itself on the continental stage, signing the Portugal captain would be one of the clearest statements of ambition money can buy. But this is the detail many people are overlooking when discussing this deal. The release clause specifically available to foreign clubs, believed to be around 65 million euros, has officially expired this summer. Previously, that figure created a relatively clear route for any club outside England that genuinely wanted to test the situation, put the exact amount on the table, and, in theory, the transfer could be triggered without Manchester United needing to agree. That route no longer exists. Galatasaray cannot simply deposit the money and force United to respond to a clause already written into the contract. If they want Bruno now, they have to negotiate directly with a Manchester United side that has no intention of selling and no contractual pressure forcing them to consider an offer. This is the biggest twist in the entire story. 1 month ago, while the release clause was still active, that figure could have put real pressure on Manchester United, forcing them to calculate seriously if Galatasaray met the required amount. Today, with the clause expired, Manchester United are the side with complete control. Galatasaray can still offer a more attractive salary. They can still propose a longer contract and make Bruno one of the highest paid stars in the club's history, but they can no longer dictate the price of the deal. Everything now depends entirely on whether Manchester United are even willing to sit down and negotiate. And more importantly, they still have not convinced Bruno himself that the time has come to leave Old Trafford. Because right now, every signal suggests Fernandes is leaning strongly towards staying. The 2025-26 season put him back at the heart of Manchester United's revival. Bruno broke the Premier League assist record with 22 assists in a single season, surpassing the previous mark jointly held by Kevin De Bruyne and Thierry Henry, while contributing 31 goals and assists across all competitions. The Premier League Player of the Season award that followed almost felt inevitable, the first time a Manchester United player had won it since Nemanja Vidic more than a decade earlier. More important than the individual numbers, Bruno played a major role in taking Manchester United back to the Champions League under new manager Michael Carrick. And the story does not stop with Galatasaray. The BBC previously reported that Juventus and AC Milan were also among the European clubs prepared to meet the old release clause figure if it had remained active, although how serious either club truly is remains difficult to determine, and some recent reports suggest Juventus are becoming more cautious about expensive deals. Even so, the fact that 3 or 4 major clubs are monitoring a 31-year-old player says something very clear. The market understands that Bruno is at a very particular point in his career. He is good enough to transform a team immediately and experienced enough to make an instant impact in the dressing room, but he is also at an age that forces Manchester United to start thinking carefully about how long any new contract should run and what valuations still make sense. Keeping Bruno through this summer is one thing. Keeping him settled for another 2 or 3 seasons is a completely different challenge. Manchester United have opened talks over a new contract with Fernandes, and according to several English reports in recent days, discussions between the two sides are believed to be progressing positively, with the aim of reaching an agreement in the near future. Bruno's current contract expires in the summer of 2027, although the club still has the option to trigger an automatic 1-year extension, which means United are technically under no pressure to sell this summer. But at the same time, both sides understand that the situation cannot continue indefinitely without a final resolution. Galatasaray have put money on the table, a lot of money. Manchester United have made their position clear, so clear that it is difficult to interpret it any other way. The most important part now lies with the man standing between the two sides, Bruno Fernandes himself. What would you do if you were Bruno at 31, facing a new project in Istanbul with double the income and financial security for the rest of your career? Would you leave? Or would you stay as captain and continue betting the final peak years of your career on Manchester United's promising return? And if the contract talks at Old Trafford do not reach a final agreement soon, this may only be the first chapter of a much longer story. Leave your answer in the comments.